I have always been a creative dude, particularly in my head, and I guess the expression part of it has either been a natural thing or has been a challenge with a huge amount of practice to make something work. Some days my body, my speech does opposite things to what I am thinking about, and that becomes my work of creativity and what I do with that in the expression process. For example, poetry is probably my most natural thing to write, yet to take that to the next level, to express it out loud, articulate it, or even perform it in movement. I will need to work with my body, and whatever spasms or awkward moments there might be upon me, to achieve my outcome. Using sounds, speech in my art and creative expression, particularly for an audience, is not only challenging for me, but also for those who are listening to my speech or sounds. Music has its own purpose or reason, where I am inspired and moved through listening to the rhythm. Many times I have an urge to break out in song, and I feel my sounds bursting like a bubble inside. I have those surprise moments where I can do it well, usually when I'm not thinking about it. Whereas, my visual art and my dance enables me to go much deeper more quickly, to achieve the connection and communication that I desire for. Having said that though, I am driven by passion and determination to create the process, and the journey it takes me on, whatever that is, in what form or way that may be, and the question to myself is, am I being who I am?
Well, we found each other when I was brought in as a choreographer on a play called Perfectly Imperfect. This is back in 2010, so 7 years ago. And Mel was the lead actor in that. There were 3 other women, all in wheelchairs, all with varying levels of speech and movement. And it was about parenting, issues surrounding people with disability becoming parents and all the associated things to do with that. And we needed a scene where a lovemaking scene and a birthing scene. And so quite, controversial areas to do with body. And so I suggested that maybe if we got out of the chair and got rid of the disability equipment and brought the body onto the floor, that would be a good way to deal with it, because I come from a contemporary dance background. And this was actually the first time Mel had moved out of her chair, apart from just transferring in normal life. So it was a big thing for her. I didn't realise how big it was when I asked her if she'd get out, and it was a fantastic thing to watch. Like a slowed down glacier moving to the floor. And yeah, we just sort of hit it off because we've got a similar aesthetics and sense of humour and interest, and we just we kept the relationship going and started building a dance practice that then developed into my PhD research. I was working with taking contemporary dance as a solo into site-specific areas, trying to bring the audience into the action, incorporating video projection with live bodies. So my experience of making screen dance work, which was a way to sort of preserve and distribute my work more, meant that I actually felt more removed from people, that you don't get the sort of feedback that you get when you work as a live performer. So I was trying to bring the flesh back into the content. And that was fine. I was working on a solo in a train carriage. And then I thought, well, what if I brought other sorts of different bodies? And Mel and I had been practicing together, so I suggested that we could perhaps do a duet, and that has since built and built and built. So we've done a few performances together. So clearly it contributed to my research because it was looking at issues to do with different bodies, ageing bodies, you know, we're the same age. We're both single women in our 50s, oh my God. So there's a whole lot of issues that are already there. There's great content to deal with in feminist perspective and ableist perspective as well. So it's meant that as a dancer I've been able to not die the death of, you know, retiring at 35, but to look at what I can do with my body. I mean, I still work quite physically with my body, but it's about attending to how you move and how you work with time. It's looking at all these different sort of virtuosities. That effort is great. I use the metaphor of screen dance a lot, that it's like zooming in. So when we work together, it's finding ways to really listen to the distribution of weight, but also to be mindful of the surprises that can happen, so that we don't die. We've injured ourselves a bit, but we've built other strategies for survival. So it's a very finely tuned contact improvisation, really.
My collaboration with Diane is very mutual, honest, and real, and that is what makes it incredibly interesting and powerful. Diane doesn't treat me anything like most other people do. She knows I'm capable of doing much more, and gives me respect for my directions. People will often say to me how amazing I am, and what an inspiration I am because of my abilities or disability. And that is flattering and nice to hear. But it doesn't help me to go beyond my corner of the world. My partnership with Diane has enabled me to work with my disability and exist in a very able-bodied world where she and I unite and meet together. When I'm dancing with Diane, the partnership or relationship becomes one body and two minds. It feels like we know what we can do with each other so well now, that the mind offers that gesture of creativity, imagination, and exploration that we continue to use. I simply don't question what I can or can't do when Diane is on the dance floor, if I have the urge, and it feels right. I do it.
So if we could work together and reflect and build that paper together, it was a really interesting process. It was like taking the dance practice into another format, into language and writing, because we've worked for so long now. We've done a lot of thinking about what it is that we've done and learnt, and it's important to get the equal voice out there. And because we get a lot of questions about our work, yeah.
Whenever inclusive arts is mentioned, I feel excited, and I feel nervous at the same time. I have the tendency to want to be involved in a lot of events and activities, particularly around dance and movement, and many of these places and events are not really designed to include a dancer with a physical disability. So I either have to miss out altogether, or find a way in the door, and sometimes that means climbing steps to see a performance, or to participate in a workshop, and doing a balancing act in a toilet that has no railings. I struggle with the concept of inclusive arts, as in my mind, it should be the same entrance entitlement for all people to participate no matter what. But, of course, in the real world, that we are far from inclusive arts. The things I want to see and do are not just the big public activities, where disability access is high on the agenda and well accommodated for. I have the imagination and creative need to want to check out the not so public events and places. Having said that, yes, I will push the limits when it involves me personally, and it is something my heart and mind is set on to achieve. I will find a way to make that happen. It can take a lot of effort just to do the simplest things, like attend a workshop where I'm the only participant with a disability there. But it can be really stimulating, challenging, and incredibly satisfying. I get to meet some fantastic like-minded people, experience many different artistic practice, and I learn some new things about myself and the community I have connected with. In most cases, it also helped to shift people's perception of disability and hopefully can begin to build more inclusion, not just for myself, but for others too.
Sometimes if something's an inclusive event, it's sort of a bit watered down and everybody's rushing to, push us into the front row and, it's... Whereas if we turn up somewhere, suddenly people have to... we're prepared. We just get creative about how we can manage things, like getting upstairs, 38 stairs to a workshop or... but it's good for people to see that and not go, I'm at a disability event, but this is just another body that I'm going to roll around on the floor with. It's really, I think it's important to infiltrate the world that's not ramping up,